the life experience that we all bring to this realm of music we call jazz, how do how do you communicate that to a student? Is that something that you can pass on in a lesson or two?
Probably not in a lesson or two,
Mm-hmm.
but music is a reflection of life. If it doesn't reflect life, then it has really no purpose other than just entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference, I guess, between an entertainer and an artist. If you want to be an entertainer, you want to grow long hair, and you want to get these huge amplifiers and just do that thing that will make you money, okay, I guess that serves a purpose too.
But there's a lot of entertainers with shaved heads now.
Well, that's true. Yeah, let's not leave him out. That's correct. But there's also the artist who sometimes doesn't get recognized as much because he's not willing to change because it's fashionable to be a certain way. He's willing to stick to what he believes is his purpose here, and that's to tell his story his way as he sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of say that to my students in that in the very beginning, it's just like when you go to school. You start off, you go into kindergarten, and all you know how to do is maybe cut something out with scissors, and you paste it together, and that's your project for the day. Then you go to first grade, and maybe they teach you what the ABCs are. I mean, I don't really know how that whole thing works, but as you go on, you learn the fundamentals of what it takes to maybe be a great writer. You learn parts of speech, you take linguistics, you take English, and then by the time you get to high school, you've got all your preparatory stuff out of the way, and you go to a school of higher learning, which will allow you to take that information that you have and now focus on something that now you can find out who you are as a person. So you have to have those fundamentals out of the way, in other words. So in the beginning, I teach my students very simple stuff like a very simple chord, how a chord is made, how a chord and a scale relate to each other, how an arpeggio and a chord relate to each other. And as you go along, you add elements, you add more elements, and then you take those elements and you use them in a so-called, maybe like what you would call like a sentence. And so you get a chance to
Tell your story.
Tell your story in very simple terms. And as you go along, you get more comfortable with the idea of taking these elements and using them to tell your story. But the whole time I'm encouraging them to take in everything. Don't just find one thing and just kind of hone in on that. You should listen to some rock music, you should listen to some jazz, you should listen to some classical music, because each one of those things will add dimension to your playing. And ultimately, hopefully, if you do your homework and you're true to your craft, you will ultimately find your own voice. You see what I'm saying? So I don't want you to go out and just learn a bunch of scales, which would be satisfactory to get you through the day. In other words, if you just knew a bunch of big words, you could sit in a room and you could actually convince somebody that you know what you're talking about when you really don't. And I think that's the difference in how a person who just has a one-dimensional approach to playing as opposed to somebody who has a worldly approach to playing. Like you take a guy like Wes Montgomery, I think he had like 6 kids and he had a job, and he would stay up all night to be able to go to the jam session, and somehow he would clean himself up in the morning and go to work, and the cycle would continue. I mean, I'm sure it was a mitigating factor in why he died so young. You know, I think he was like 44, 45 years old. He passed away. But listen to his records. He's like, man, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, man, because I got a story to tell.